afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today here at the Imperial. The topics that we are discussing in this panel, they're more of the things that have become buzzword in recent years. Chat GPT came in November 2022. Generative AI became the buzzword. But it's more than that. We'll be discussing that. Then sustainability in context of HR practices. And of course, taking some of the things that the previous panel was talking about regarding happiness and chief happiness officers, right? So my first question, panelists, let's start with generative AI. We've seen how artificial intelligence has driven talent acquisition in recent years, talent management. How do you see the future of HR practices being driven by, be it Gen AI, data-driven analytics, shaping the acquisition practices, and moreover, management, not only for HR managers, but also for the talent themselves as to what they're expected to do within an organization. Mr. Kapoor, if you would like to start.
I think generative AI, which is the buzzword, is also a very useful tool. And the three broad areas where it can be used. The first of all, I think it's going to be the opportunity for the HR professionals and the HR leaders or the people leaders to upskill themselves and the entire talent that they have in the organization, how to use generative AI. Because it's not going to be one tool which is just a normal tool. It's a tool which is continuously evolving on intelligence. So how to use that, leverage that for the organization is going to be a challenge. So first of all, I think that's the area where it, all the HR leaders will have to work on. The second, of course, is how to leverage this technology and this tool and this entire the stuff that you have, the technology that you have, on managing the entire life cycle of the employees, starting from the acquisition, matching the talent that you acquire with the needs of the organization, then onboarding, and then, of course, managing their performance, and if there is an exit, how to manage that. Because till now, what we've seen is organizational policies are more like a generic policies. They are policies for everyone. The AI tool will give a chance to the HR leaders to personalize it, depending on the individual. So how the individual reacts to everything, that will be different, because we are all different people. So this is the area where things will move from a generic stuff to a personalized stuff, to more customization for the individuals throughout the employee life cycle. And the third, of course, is the predicting the talent pipeline for the organization. See how the industries will evolve, how your talent has to evolve is going to be very dynamic. If the kind of talent that you required changed every 20 years some time ago, now it will change every maybe 2-3 years. That's the speed at which things are changing. That's the speed at which the environment is changing. The business dynamics is changing. Disruption is happening all across. So how to predict what is going to happen in the industry? Where do you stand as an organization within that industry, and what is going to be your talent requirement? So build the talent pipeline depending on the requirement of the organization, and then using AI for that. So I think these are the three broad areas where they will use the generative AI.
Very rightly put, Mr. Kapoor, especially the part on personalization. Mr. Kumar, what are your thoughts on it? How this personalization being overcome through the uniformity that we have in talent management practices with the help of technology?
Yeah, thanks for that. First of all, I agree with everything that Salil said over here. But I would like to just shift the dimension of the question a little bit. As HR professionals in the room, all of us think about how do we transform ourselves and our function, and how do we go up the value chain. There is a very big part of HR that is very operational. No matter what happens, HR is still the gatekeeper of policies. It is still expected to be the operational backbone behind the infrastructure of talent, right? I think AI and new tech like Gen AI, etc., is going to allow HR to really move up the value chain. And here's a couple of examples what I would suggest would happen. Especially in talent acquisition. you know, your usual conventional method is that, you know, especially in broad skill jobs, let's say I'm come from a tech industry, so you're hiring a software engineer or you're hiring nurses in the previous panel, for example, you have a very, very broad skill set. You know, you can go and hire. How do you know that a person A is better than a person B when you have 1,000, you know, papers to look through? You know, Gen AI will be able to naturally shortlist that beyond a human eye can decipher in the first go. So I think that's helpful. Second thing is, how do you create a candidate persona? Today, you know, it's too much for a talent acquisition manager to sift through 3 or 4 sheets of paper, go through the resume and understand what this person is all about. What you know, generative AI tool will begin to do is create a candidate persona much before the candidate actually even applies formally and sits in front for an interview. You will know through the social chatter, you will know what is the opinion, whatever the person is saying on the paper, how much of that opinion is actually differing or is aligned in the real world. What is this individual really saying about his values, his principles, his policies, his approach to life? If you are hiring him for a manager, then how is he going to do as a manager, and what are his beliefs? I think it is going to be a unimaginable insight you will get even before the candidate comes in front for an interview. Now, our world is shrinking. Pandemic has told us, right? We all are interviewing today on Zoom. But you know, when you interview, that I'm coming to the third piece, which is when you are interviewing through a Zoom, you are looking through one box, right? And we've all, in the last 3 years, done a very good job of it, and sometimes we've actually got it quite wrong. The candidate hasn't actually turned out to be what he appeared to be, right? We've all had that experience. I think a tool like Metaverse or generative AI is going to create that interviewing process a lot more realistic, a lot more immersive. Think about a hologram technology, and if that was to come into play, you would be able to see and have a real life interview without actually the person being in front of you. The fourth piece is around the engagement and how you onboard the employee and engagement. Now, 2 big pieces of the engagement. There are many things that actually, you know, impacts engagement of an employee with the organization, but 2 big things that really matters to an employee, as we have heard in the previous panel also, is talent development. Everybody likes to learn and move ahead in life so that they can take the manager's job and then their manager's job, etc. Unless and until you are upskilling yourself, you will not be able to do that. A tool like generative AI or Metaverse can create, while you are sitting at your home, a very immersive learning experience. What you are learning through a PowerPoint presentation today, through a Zoom group discussion today, can become extremely immersive. So the power of generative AI in our world is really going to change. The other thing that I'll say is mentorship. You know, I come from a tech industry where we are still working in a hybrid environment, and one thing that has suffered the most is mentorship. What is mentorship? Mentorship is about a human touch. You sit in front of somebody you trust and you open yourself, and that person understands your problem and is able to guide you. That's what mentoring is all about. But when the mentoring is not happening in a room, is happening over Zoom, how do you make that real? Right? Again, a metaverse and a generative AI technology combined together can make this come alive a lot. So I think, in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that when these technologies mature and when industries find for their domain and their talent pool what are the applications, it is going to open an unimaginable opportunity for HR to move up this value chain where low value added work, operational work can be put to generative AI kind of a tool, and HR can focus more on individuals, on talent, on engagement, on happiness, as we talked about. So I would say those are the 2 cents I would add to Salil.
Really a comprehensive list of potential use cases that we are seeing. Mr. Singh, what are your thoughts on that?
In fact, before this panel discussion started, I was just chatting with some people, and they were just, some people were saying कि यार प्रेम सिंह का तो panel discussion बाद में था, वो CEO वाले panel discussion में कैसे आ गया? So CEO is the people who really handle the business. So business managers, business leaders के discussion में, what will Prem Singh talk about? Why the hell he is there? उसके हिस्से में क्या आएगा? सारी चीज़ें तो business leaders बोल जाएंगे. So I just want to say this, किसी के हिस्से में मकान आया, किसी के हिस्से में दुकान आई, मैं घर में सबसे छोटा था, मेरे हिस्से में माँ आई. So that's a तालियां बजा सकते हो. I think that will keep all of you also slightly more connected with us. So coming back to the question, I think it's largely proven that tech involvement, tech application, particularly the AI application now, which is maturing at a very fast pace, certainly can create a lot of value around the consistency, around the predictability of the right candidate in talent acquisition. Number two, it can also predict the likelihood of a talent, of a candidate being successful or otherwise in a particular environment. That's number two. Number three, a very well established case which I have seen personally for quite a long time is ability to predict the risk of flight. If somebody is likely to leave in next 3 months, 6 months, and you are able to see those behaviors, and if you are able to correlate the behaviors, of course there is a AI tool, there is a whole lot of algorithm that works behind. So that also gives you a lot of early signals about risk of flight. Learning and development, particularly using the gamification, engagement of people, that's another proven test case which has also proven the prowess of technology in HR. Around experience, I think that is the latest area. To me, the whole lot of experience right from the point that you touch a employee till the time you are keeping the employee in the system, till the point that the person really retires or leaves, the entire experience, all that can be captured through a automated tool, all that can be enhanced through AI, all that can be really sharpened to make sure that it creates a value for employee and also it creates a consistency of desired outcome for the organization. But I would say this, all these are tools. The accuracy of all these tools is dependent upon what you have fed in the system. I'll just give an example. It relates to slightly on the business side, but it also brings live the spirit of experience of a customer. You know, one of our large businesses is tire. We manufacture and sell tires. Tires may warranty claims normally about 2 years ago, it used to take anywhere between 1 day to 10, 12 days, depending upon the complexity of the case, the damage. Now, here is what we have done. Using the AI, using the data science, we have been able to create algorithm and we have fed the entire possibilities, millions and millions of data points into the system, and where the real case of damage comes, where the warranty claim comes, the tool compares against the database which is really running into millions of data points. And all these are pictures. Now, once you get a warranty claim, take a picture of this, feed into the computer, into the system, and the system compares it. In 85% of the cases, the system is able to give you a yes or no, whether the warranty claim is admissible or no, within 5 minutes, in 85% of the cases. In another 10% of the cases, it is able to give you in about 15, 16 minutes, yes or no. Balance about 4-5%, we are still evolving because the system is learning. System is also evolving based upon the test cases that come. And in next couple of years, we believe that we'll be able to transition to close to 100. I'm not claiming that we'll be able to come to 100 all the way, but because the system is also evolving as the new cases come up. But this whole piece of generative AI, generative tools, this is also learning itself. Fundamentally, the question that we should be asking is, how does it create value for people and for the organization? I think that is where the real crux lies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. I'll shift my focus to sustainability that I mentioned in the beginning. I was at a Fortune 100 company's International Media Day in Chicago, and they were talking about Generation Z at workplace and what their expectations are from a workplace. And one of the things that they listed was that sustainability, what are these practices that an organization is taking towards their part to sustainability. I want to understand how much is that a determining factor when we are talking about Generation Z at a workplace? Are they really looking at, and if they are, how are HR practices being shaped to incorporate this? Mr. Kapoor?
I'll step a little back, back before I answer that question. I learned this very early in my life, in my work life. One of my favorite bosses, and we all, as was said earlier, we learn from our bosses who are our teachers and mentors. So I used to work for a company called LG Electronics, and we had a very great boss called Mr. K.R. Kim. So once he told me that a motivated soldier is much more able and effective out there in the field, in the trenches, as compared to one who is not so motivated but might be much more able and talented. So motivation is always more important and critical than talent. Why I'm saying this is that motivation comes from various factors. And motivation is a driver which drives your energy and your intelligence, because the combination of the two out there puts you into that flow which brings the performance. Now, motivation for different generations comes from different areas. People earlier were, motivated more from, and that is very much related to the evolution of the society. We, in that Maslow's hierarchy, our society, which was suppressed for a long time. So, as Raj mentioned in the earlier one, so the money, kitna paisa milega, kitni increment milegi, was the core question of motivation for people. I think now, when we are moving to the next level, when the basics are being taken care of for a certain, critical mass, the next generation is looking for the next answer, or what is the purpose. So it's not only that money. What makes them happy is the purpose, and everybody has a different purpose. So it could be sustainability for few who connect with that topic, equality for others, a general connect with the organization's purpose, matching with your own life purpose. So all this will become very, very critical to not only sustainability. People will look for different areas and the value system of the organization, because then that sense of belongingness will come, because then I am with you because you are thinking, or you have the value system which matches with my value system, so I belong to you, and if I belong to you, I give you the entire me, not only a couple of hours. Because, see, work is not those 8-9 hours. That's a very wrong notion. Work is 24 hours. We are what we do, right? And I don't know, I still have to meet people who step out of the office and they switch off the office. It doesn't happen. So your work extends to your personal life, it goes to your house, it involves your family at a certain level, it involves your entire time and your future, it affects your health, it affects your physical and mental well-being. So work is very critical. Work, that matching of purpose at work, and that matching of value system is very, very critical now. And earlier it was something else. And as the societies evolve, it changes. So we have to recognize that the next generation will be more at home, will belong better, will perform better once those things are taken care of.
Right. Very rightly put, Mr. Kapoor. Mr. Kumar, if you would like to add, beyond, let's say, just as Mr. Kapoor said, beyond sustainability for this generation, what is that they're looking for? What is the purpose beyond the monetary things, or opposition in a company?
See, I think we will all be collectively lying in this room if we said that money was not a motivation. So I think people still have to pay for their pay for the bills and take care of the family. So it'll always remain an important motivator. But coming back to the question you were asking, I think the younger generation, there is there is a conundrum in the younger generation, what we call as Gen Z, or what you can also call as an Insta generation, right? The generation that looks for instant gratification in everything. I want my promotion today. I want my hike today. I want to get to the next point in my life today. So what if somebody else took 4 years? I want to get there 1 year. We are a very ambitious society, extremely ambitious society. So that's one phenomena, and I'm sure all of you HR, CHROs who are sitting over here have experienced it, and it's really challenging. The second phenomena that is actually happening at the same time, coming to your question, is actually people are getting a lot more conscious about what does my company do? What does my company do, and what is the purpose of the job that I do? And the challenge is not that people are asking that question. I don't think, as a CEO sitting where I am sitting and CHROs that you're sitting, I don't think the question is that people are thinking about sustainability. I think the real challenge is when you have these two conundrums, how do you articulate a balance? How do you tell somebody that your growth, your material growth is equally important, and what organization is doing from a purpose point of view, from a sustainability point of view, from a climate change point of view, XYZ, CSR point of view, how these two things match? And I think that's the real challenge. I don't have an answer, but I'm provoking a thought in the room that when we go back to our work, that's what is a huge challenge in front of us as leaders, as to how do we create a balance in this young generation who's looking for instant gratification, but at the same time is making the leadership and the company answerable for the sustainability goals, for the CSR goals. And a big part of that motivation, of the second part, comes from the fact that individuals and societies are becoming more conscious as they are reading more, as they are learning more about what's happening in the Western world. We are skipping social maturity cycles, and we are jumping to what the Western countries are trying to do. Nothing wrong in that. We have to leapfrog, right? We don't need to follow the changes that the Western organizations have gone through. We need to leapfrog. But I think it's also a way for our younger generations to articulate what their company is really doing. So when somebody asks them in social circle, where their family asks them in social circle as to what the company is doing, it is the leadership's responsibility to give that articulation to the employee as to what the company does. I'll give you an example. About 2 decades back, I was working in a financial services company, a very large, one of the largest financial companies on the planet, which used to have about $350 billion in assets. And I had very young children at that time, and I used to go back home, and my daughter used to ask me, my son actually used to ask me, he was only about 6 years old, and he used to say, what do you do for a living? So you go to this company and you work that late hour, and you ask me on dinner, what do you do? And I was young in my career at that time. I didn't have an answer, because how do you answer a question that I give money to people and I charge interest rate on that? How do you create purpose in that? It was a lightning bolt, because I realized that if I'm not able to communicate my job to my own family members, how the hell can I communicate that to my employees? Over a period of time, wisdom transcended, and I was able to articulate that. And actually, what you're doing is you are expanding an ability for the so-called people who do not have the money to have a better livelihood and better life. You are giving them a chance, to get ahead in life, and that articulation found a purpose in my family. And only reason why I'm giving you this example is that I relate the younger generation that is coming into workforce to be carrying that same question. What is my organization doing that makes me feel good? And reflect on that question in the conundrum that I presented, which is, they want to get materially ahead. They want everything now, today, but at the same time, as a leadership, we have to give that. So the answer is absolutely yes. There is very, very high heightened consciousness around sustainability, around purpose. But how do we articulate that is also going to be important, because we have to walk the talk.
Mr. Singh, if you would like to add on the balance that Mr. Kumar is, that we have to create, if you would like to add on that, striking that fine balance.
Sure. So, 2 parts of your question, Arjun. One is you spoke about sustainability. Second is you spoke about the young generation, millennials, zillennials, the next to that. Now, aspirations I think it would be wrong to say that the young generation is looking for only A and not for B. Meaning, not only money, but also many more things are important. And this overall package, the importance of this overall package is only growing. Let me expand. Money is important, career growth is important, learning is important. I'm talking about the young generation. What is even more important is a meaning in the job, the purpose in the job. And I'll talk about a study that we did on the children of the schools who are in the 9th, 10th, 11th, and the 12th standard. About 200, 300 children. Very interesting. And we asked them the questions like, what is your dream company? What kind of organization would you like to work for? What kind of work environment do you visualize you would love? Very interesting answers. You know, many of them, and they did not use the buzzwords like sustainability. They did not use the buzzwords like ESG or SDG. Many of them said, I would like to work for a company which gives me time, my own time. Somebody said, I would like to work for a company which allows me to work on my unique talent. You know, one girl who was differently abled, she said, I'm not great at 10 things, but I'm great in this particular thing. I would like to work for a company, she's a guitarist, who encourages me to leverage this talent. I can do a lot of things using these skills in trying to create a positive work culture. One student said, I would like to work for a company which encourages its people to do a lot of social work. They did not use the buzzwords like social impact, volunteering. Somebody said, I would like to work for a company which is into the lot of environment-related, education-related, working for the downtrodden, less privileged, etc. Now look at this drift. Lot of these kids, they have not yet heard all the buzzwords that we talk in the corporate, but they are already thinking all those things that are important. It means for these kids, and they are important because in next 5 years, they will be our employees. So the expectations from the next generation is, do whatever you are doing now, all that is taken as given. That's basic. But also graduate to the next level. Sustainability, ESG, SDG, all that is important. We call it through a different names. These kids are using their own language, but for them, these things are far more important. Number one. Number two, you also spoke about how do we create meaning, how do we create purpose. I think it would be wrong to say that everybody can be driven by the same purpose, same meaning, same yardstick. I think organizations will have to find ways and means of how do you create those small milestones where different sections of organizations are able to find some connection. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a challenge. But that's where organizations will have to spend time, and they will really have to think through as to how they really want to engage. Eventually, it's also a question of maintaining a balance, because you can't be doing everything at the expense of being so spendthrift. You also need to be cost conscious, and you also need to be cost effective. Balance is very important. And at this point, I like to talk about this concept of pendulum. You know, pendulum, as we learned in the class 8, when it goes to any extreme, its velocity becomes zero. It goes to this extreme, becomes zero, comes back, goes to this extreme, speed becomes zero again. When it is running at the center, it is running the fastest. So the point is, the point where all your systems are trying to seek a balance, that is where you are most optimum in your endeavors. I think That is something as organizations, we need to find that sense of balance. Organization's requirements and also the employees' aspirations.
Very rightly put, Mr. Singh. We have some last 10 minutes, last question, and that is being carried forward from the panel discussion that we were having before us, was about regarding the notions of happiness and the nomenclature change that we are seeing in terms of chief happiness officer, people officer. I want to understand from you, Mr. Kapoor, starting from you, that has that nomenclature change bring some unique perspective? Does it bring that? Or, is it just a name change for talent managers you're seeing? And let's say what the wish list that Mr. Singh presented through his studies that this generation has, are these talent officers, these happiness officers, they're able to bring that, incorporate that in the day-to-day operations?
So there's a famous line from Romeo and Juliet where Shakespeare says, "What's in a name? Rose will remain a rose, it will smell the same sweet way, but you call it by any other name." So that was then, right? So HR head, if you look at from his lens, HR head will remain HR head, whatever your designation you call it. But the reality is slightly different because the society has evolved over a period of time. The name and the designation creates a perception, not only and the perception creates certain expectations, and not only for people, but also for yourself and the individual. I just came across 2-3 very interesting the designations. For a CEO writes, and there's a company called Plume Design, I was talking to them yesterday. The CEO writes, Chief Servant of the People of Plume. It's a global connectivity related, and they work in the telecom space, and they're about 4 to 5 billion as of now. The CEO there writes, Chief Servant of People of Plume. Now that probably brings a very different kind of expectation for the entire people, part of that team, part of that organization. Similarly, when you look at what we have for the HR head designations, which have changed over a period of time. So CHRO, which is Human Resources Officer, and it's not happiness. I wish they could call it Chief Happiness Officer, but they usually call it Chief Human Resources Officer. It's a very limiting term. It's human resources and how to manage that. It's very limiting kind of a thing. Even there's another one that they have started calling it, which is also very limiting, where the Chief Talent Officer, for example, is just managing the talent. But when you go a little wide and you understand that it's people end of the day. It's people end of the day, it's not processes, it's not technology, it's not resources. The delivery comes from people who manage those resources. So if you widen the term and say Chief People Officer, it does bring a different perspective. And I think it's a good practice because it will set different expectations for everyone in the organization, and the individual who will carry the designation will have to live up to those expectations. So I think the name change or the designation change is probably going to help, not maybe immediately, but over a period of time. And definitely it will address a wider set of issues from the individuals, because the things are changing, the expectations are changing, the challenges are changing, and so should the delivery change.
Thank you, Mr. Kapoor. Mr. Kumar, your thoughts on the unique perspectives?
I think broadly, I 100% agree with whatever Salil said over here, but I think we have to understand that, just because you change the designation doesn't change anything unless and until you have a reason for that designation to be there in the first place. Some things are very embedded in your consciousness. When you say Chief Human Resources Officer, how many times can we get up and challenge that designation? No, you won't, because it's embedded in your memory. That's how we have learned the ways of the world. But when you suddenly say that, my CHRO is called as a Chief Experience Officer, and that person doesn't do anything around experience, then that doesn't do. It's just lip service. So a lot of the designation change, I think, needs to be well thought through, and At the end of the day, again, I'm trying to give this answer more as a thought provoker, not as somebody who knows all the answers in the world. But in this community, in this room, which is a CHRO, I think you all have to be very thoughtful that if you are bringing in a chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, and if that person is just sitting around and not doing any initiative around diversity, equity, and inclusion, then it's a lie. Don't do it. It's a lie to the organization. It's a lie to people. And in the earlier panel discussion also, we were talking about this topic that, at the end of the day, our employees, forget about employees. We all, how many of us have children? Like, at a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, our children begin to observe our say-do ratio. When you promise something to your child, and you say that I will get it, and you don't do it, the child will remind you. So somewhere in their subconscious memory, every individual is programmed to understand your say-do ratio. And if you are creating a designation that sounds fancy, but does not flow through in the organization in terms of the impact that it brings to the employees, then your say-do is broken. And you rather not do anything, rather than lying to the organization that you're trying to do something. So I don't want to answer that this is a buzzword or it is not. I don't want to pass a judgment whether it is needed or not. That's obviously at an individual level. I mean, there could be a company that has a very low engagement score, and we may want to bring in Chief Engagement Officer as a message to the organization that I am taking this seriously, and guys, I want to make a change. That's very good. And if you do make the change around engagement, then you will say, okay, there's a step change. Employees will say, I understand that leadership heard me and there's a step change and has brought a Chief Engagement Officer. And XYZ is happening now in the organization that was previously not happening. Very well charted, thought, great. But if you bring a Chief Engagement Officer and nothing else happens, then it's a lie. So I would say that, the follow-through is extremely important. The say-do is extremely important, whatever designation you want to call it. But I don't think just replacing a CHRO with something else is going to be the solution to the problem that you may be facing.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Mr. Singh, quickly, your concluding thoughts on it.
Sure. So 2 things here. One is, and I think in the previous discussion also it came up, happiness. And somebody said, is it really a touchy-feely concept or it's really the substantive stuff? And I think Raj made that point very powerfully. You see, at the end of the day, people are looking for 2 things. Number 1, they want to be successful, and number 2, they want to be happy. Happiness, people may not be able to articulate it every day. They might use words like career growth, learning, etc. But finally, happiness does matter. It is not a touchy-feely concept. It's a real concept. That's number 1. Number 2, I know a lot of organizations where they have designated some people as Chief Happiness Officer, Chief Experience Officer. Is it completely unproductive? Answer is no. It is productive to some extent, and let me just elaborate. You see, when you declare somebody as Chief Happiness Officer or Chief Experience Officer, narrative you are setting in the organization is happiness and experience is important. So it helps to set that narrative, to create that communication channel that these 2 things, this 1 or 2 things are important for us, and we must be chasing these. We must be going after them. But what is even more important is what you do after that. That is where I agree with my fellow panelists. So creating those titles does help you to drive that narrative, but what you do after is far more important. At the end of the day, happiness, once again, and experience are substantive stuff. They are real stuff. It may be difficult to metricize them, but it's not impossible. In fact, it is very feasible to metricize them. A lot of companies are doing, and therefore, we should not be mistakenly putting them under the carpet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, and thank you all the panelists for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please have a big round of applause? Thank you so much.